I think, as I said, the flat Earth is. I think there's more to it than what I've shown in my blog so far, but I kind of want to present it as a stepping stone. And I mean, I think when debating the flat Earth, I think there's a lot of questions that people have that I think it's very difficult to debate. The moon landing, for example, or NASA's lies, satellites. How do satellites work? The spinning ball, and etc. Coriolis effect. There's so many questions, and I've tried to present them in my blog in a really logical way. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm glad to cover anyone you want to pick out if anything stands out to you.
Well, what exactly convinced you that the Earth is flat?
So the first thing that I looked at in depth was curvature maths. So if you do in my 18th blog post, I do derive the curvature maths. Like if you have a sphere, what's the curve per mile on a ball, and I derived that with Pythagoras theorem and then Taylor series, and you get the formula for the curvature, and then you look out on the horizon and it doesn't really match, because after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 miles, it's supposed to curve quite a lot, and buildings should start tilting away from you. If you're on a ball from 60 miles out, or you shouldn't be able to see the bottom half of buildings if they're 60 miles away, which you can actually do if you stand and have a good view of the horizon. So that for me, for one, maths, no matter what I believe or what I've been programmed, maths and numbers don't lie. And if the maths for the curvature of a ball doesn't match what I see in nature with my own two eyes, then there's a big problem. So that was the first major question that convinced me that something was going on. Then it's the fact, some very point blank questions. We're told we're spinning at the equator at over 1,000 miles per hour, moving around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour, and the solar system, the sun, is moving at 283,000 miles per hour, and the galaxy itself is moving at whatever miles per hour. These are massive speeds, and yet we feel nothing. That's kind of another big question. I mean, we're told that gravity is the reason why we don't feel anything, but gravity can hold, or they say gravity can hold 321 million cubic miles of water down onto the ground. That's how strong it is, and yet a butterfly can just hover. And there's just some very obvious questions that don't really make sense.
Well, Richard, let me ask you a question, Richard, real quick. So I've read what's his name, the major flat Earth conspiracy guy's book. Okay, I bought it 2 years ago. Yeah.
Atlantean conspiracy, or
whatever the guy's the book is his bestseller on Amazon. It's it's all pictographic. It's a very fascinating book. I read it about 2 years ago, and it definitely took me down a rabbit hole. The one thing that book really had me asking serious questions about and made me really start to think, what the fuck is going on, was the charts of planes, right? Like how planes fly transcontinentally and how they're not allowed to fly from certain locations on in the routes, and that was there was a whole chapter on that. Talk a little bit about that. Like what is the proof on how they won't allow planes to go from point A to point B because of it's because the Earth is, they don't want people flying the planes to know.
Right, I'm not sure which. I haven't read that chapter, so I'm not sure on that particular question. But I mean, planes. The big question with planes is the southern hemisphere flights.
Right.
And another one is, how do planes land on a spinning ball? I mean, if the ball is spinning and a plane's coming in, from south to north, and the Earth is spinning in the perpendicular direction, the Earth is spinning below it. How can it land on something that's moving sideways? It would surely crash. Gyroscopes, a gyroscope always finds its level. It's like this, and it has a level. You can never find level on a round surface. Level, something can only be level if it's level to something that's parallel. A round surface is never parallel. That's the same with water as well. If you look at water, I've got a water bottle here. Water will always find its level no matter what container it's in. And no one has ever replicated water sticking to a ball. So these very fundamental questions that no one asks anymore. I mean, Tesla said scientists, they get lost in equations and they build something that has no relation to reality because they're they're stuck in theoretical physics and in mathematical equations that themselves make sense on a blackboard, but they have no relation to actual reality. So, I mean, to get back to your question, flights in the southern hemisphere, the distances are much greater. There's several theories with that. Either they're faking the flights,
Right.
which appears to be the case because people have gone into airports in southern hemisphere and asked them
Waited, right, and waited, yes.
they wait, they don't get anywhere.
Yes.
And there's the Qantas. They use John Travolta to make a massive big party about having the new flight line, but it's just a theater. I mean, why would they do that if it's just a normal flight? Have a massive theater to show the world that the flight exists when it actually doesn't. There's other theories, like they could be flying with the jet streams, which are very strong in the southern hemisphere. They could be using faster airplanes. I don't know, but the most logical theory for me is that the flights are faked.
Yeah, I wish I would have brought that book so I could have gone more in detail because I apologize. It's been a couple years since I read it, but that was the one point of that book that really just completely blew my mind. There was a lot of it. I mean, that guy, Eric, what's his last name again?
Eric Dubay.
Dubay. He brings up a lot of fascinating stuff, but, and Rex, you probably know this and feel free to step in, but, a lot of people have said that he is a CIA plan or he's connected to different disinfo groups and stuff. Let me ask you this, and Rex, feel free to jump in, Richard. What is the Earth? So assuming that we give you credence and that it is a plane, or it is, does that mean that there is, an infinite space out there and that, it's just we're not a circle and that there are other, planes, or is it just the plane is just a universal plane?
Well, if you, in my 16th blog post, The Torus and Ancient Cosmology,
Right.
I derived, I'll start with my first blog post, which focused on cymatics and phi. I'm sure you're familiar with phi and Fibonacci series, right? If you look at how the Fibonacci series works, the spiral, if you have a double spiral, and you put it in a circle, you'll get natural boundaries, which is much like the eye. The human eye has the pupil, then the retina or the color part, and you get natural boundaries. That's exactly the same. If you extrapolate that to how nature would work, you have plants that have this formula. Sunflowers have natural boundaries as well, which are according to phi, the mathematical ratio. The eye does. So why would the eye and sunflowers have this beautiful mathematical ratio and spiral, and the larger system we live in wouldn't have that? I think everything is connected. Everything has the same maths, and if you consider this phi mathematics on the Earth, you get natural boundaries as well. So that's one. Then you also have if you look at how nature works, studying Tesla, studying the pyramids, they get all their electrical energy from nature. It's magnetism. We live in a torus, a magnetic field, and the magnetic field is like it's kind of like an apple. An apple follows the magnetic field as well. Everything in nature does. A tree, and so in a magnetic field, you would have the center column, I guess you could call it, of the field, and then it goes out. It's like an apple. An apple has natural boundaries. Magnetic field has natural boundaries. So there you have both phi and magnetism showing you that you have natural boundaries. And when you then you take vector equilibrium as well and throw that in, all of these mathematical principles that you see in nature can be replicated on a bigger scale. And when you take this model and you compare it to how every single ancient culture, their cosmology, you take the Egyptians, you take the Norse, Yggdrasil in Iceland, you take the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Mayans, the Incas, the Navajos, the Tibetans, the Japanese, the Chinese, all of them, they have the same model. It's, different colors, different kind of design, I guess, but they all have, a ball with a flat plane and, the celestial stars on what's called the firmament, I guess.
Well, too, also remember the Piri-Reis map was based on a plane, too. Remember, that was the map that was given to, so-called, it just came out of nowhere. It wasn't based on a globe. It was based on a plane.
Yeah.
So, that's interesting.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I'd also like to say this, though. What about all of there's hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the years that have circumnavigated the globe, or at least according to the records, and I'm all for conspiracies, and I'm all for stuff being made up and false information and fake history. I have family. I mean, like not blood family, but close related ties to somebody that actually has patents on the the Generation 3 night vision. And he creates tubes. He's in his 90s now. The guy is awesome. He's still just as sharp as a tack. But he developed these tubes for NASA and for CERN. And he developed tubes that went into the first ship that actually circumnavigated, went around the world. Who was that? John Glenn, I think. So now people say, well, you can say that you've got a friend that did this and did that. And I've personally interviewed this person. I've talked to him. He was at a funeral of somebody that was very close to me. And I feel like the guy is family. So did I see pictures from NASA's inside sources that show the Earth as a circle? No. But let me ask you this, though. I mean, with all the people that have claimed to have been around the world, even people today that have gone around the world and on boats and yachts and sailboats, etc., how do you get around all of that? And, let's not even take into account the 99.9% of all photographs and footage and telescopes and everything else that show, planets out there as being globes, the moon as being a globe, etc. I'm all for the holographic universe theory too. I can definitely see that at the quantum level. There is no finite point. There's different protons, neutrons, and electrons oscillating in certain frequencies. But I mean, what is this? We're just going to get to the edge of the Earth and then fall off? Or I mean, are we in this holographic matrix setup where it makes our eyes perceive things as a globe, but in reality, it's an infinite plane that's connected to everything else?
Cool. I'll address one thing first before the circumnavigation. Is that John Glenn, who used to work at NASA, astronaut?
Yeah.
Who had a funeral recently, right?
Oh yeah.
So I saw some videos of that funeral, which are heavily Masonic symbolism everywhere. It's a hugely, he was a Freemason, and
Well, and that just because somebody's a Freemason, sorry to interrupt. I know plenty of Freemasons that are awesome people. I don't think that makes them wrong or that makes it fake. I mean, I know, for example, if you go to the Google Earth/Moon and you want to look at the actual first moon landing that supposedly took place, and you can see the satellite imagery and stuff like that. No, let me jump in. Check this out. Guess what number is around that? They've got a certain number that's marked around it several times, and you can zoom in on it and look, but you have to be very. I did a podcast on it, or not a podcast. I did a blog on this like 6 years ago. The number 33 circles the location, so that I don't think that means it's a conspiracy that Freemasons are bad, but it definitely shows their mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Freemasons, not to go off on too much of a tangent from your question, but Freemasons aren't, like, a lot of them aren't bad people. Most of them are just deceived. Because once you get up, the only people who know what's going on really are the ones at the top. It's because it's very compartmentalized, and Freemasons are told follow the light as soon as they get in, and they're inducted, and they go through the ladders, and so a lot of them don't know the bigger picture. It's like the military, the foot soldiers don't know what the generals are thinking, or where they're going to go next. So I don't want to go too much into that, but
everything is compartmentalized.
Yeah, exactly. That was my point. But the circumnavigation, just because you go, running around your neighborhood doesn't make your neighborhood a ball. In the same way, if you go around in a circle on a flat disk, on a flat plane, that doesn't make that flat plane a ball. So I'm sure you've seen the flat Earth map, and you have the North Pole in the middle. You have the South is just the Antarctic ice ring around the edge. East to west is in a circle. Like east would be, what do you say? I don't know. Like east and west is like going around like that kind of, and you have north in the middle. And the compass would always point north. I mean, even if you're in the southern hemisphere, a compass always points to magnetic north. And if you had a south pole on a globe, if you were in Australia or Brazil or somewhere in the southern hemisphere, you'd expect the compass to point to the south pole, and on the equator it would point to nowhere because it'd be in perfect balance. So the fact that a compass points to magnetic north anywhere on anywhere on Earth shows that we only have one pole, which is the North Pole, magnetic pole.
I'm showing it right now, Richard, so you can see it.
Yeah, and I mean that's that's in the north we have the northern lights, and there's a reason for that. It's the center of the magnetic field, and when you get into Tesla, I haven't written about this in my blog yet, but I'm working on it. Imagine you have a Tesla coil in the middle, what the Tibetans and Chinese call Mount Meru, giving magnetic energy to power the sun and the moon. And why? Then there's another question about this system. If you imagine you have a charge at the center and a charge at the edge, around the circular disk, and you have salt water. What is the reason for salt water? Well, if you have water and you try to pass a charge through it to light a light bulb, you won't get much light. If you put salt in the water, it's going to light up like a flashlight. It'll be really, really bright. And so it seems to me that the salt water is there as a sort of battery to power whatever it is that's giving the sun and the moon light. And the reason why it spins, you can do tests with this with magnets. If you put a north and a south pole magnet, you point all you put them on a ring, you point all the north pole magnets pointing inwards, you'll get a magnetic vortex in the middle. And you can make stuff spin naturally with just magnetic energy. The thing with the flat Earth is that it's such a perfectly holistic model. It explains phi and the pyramids, where they get their energy from. It explains why salt water is as it is. It explains the tides, because imagine the sun and the moon. One of them is positively charged, the other one's negatively charged. That's why you get the tides. When the sun comes in, imagine the water of the Earth is positively charged. The sun comes in, the positive charge of the sun repels the positive charge of the water beneath it, which makes high tide. Then the moon comes in, and it attracts the water to it. Negative and positive attracts, and you get low tide on the shores. This system is built so perfectly to be, self-sustaining. It doesn't need energy, and that's magnetic energy, which if we understood it, we could tap into it, just like Tesla did, just like the Egyptians did. And this is the energy that's being hidden from us. And when you understand this, then you see, you can. I said, these subjects open more doors. You don't really need to research climate change. If you understand that natural magnetic energy is being hidden from you, then oil, gas, coal, and green energy, as they call it, falls on its face. And it's just about control in that sense. So that's kind of why I want to focus on in my blog the bigger picture, because there's so many subjects that just fall on the wayside when you understand the bigger picture, and you don't really need to spend a lot of time researching fossil fuels, which is another misnomer, because they're not made from fossils. The flat Earth subject opens up so many doors, and it's magnificent, because you start having a newfound interest in subjects. My last blog post was on the stars. If you take a camera, probably a strong camera, but you can see with your naked eye, you can see that stars are changing their colors, twinkling, and you see that they're following sonoluminescence and cymatic patterns that you find in water as well, which is resonating in a Chladni pattern. There's a lot of things you can discover, and everything is connected. I'm writing a post on the planets now, which ties into astrology. It's when you realize that these are energies in the sky above us. Astrology suddenly starts to make a lot of sense on a flat Earth. And there's so many awesome subjects that are just when you go through the education, or rather indoctrination system, we're told that we know everything. Science has already proven everything. The only way you can discover new things is if you're a PhD in physics or a rocket scientist or something. But that's far from true. The truth is very simple, and if you ask very simple questions, you can make some very amazing discoveries in nature. Cymatics, magnetism, studying Tesla stuff, studying other people like Walter Russell, J.C. Maxwell, all of these magnetism experts. Ken Wheeler is a guy who's doing a lot of good work now. You start to study these guys, and you get a newfound appreciation for what nature is, what's going on there. And the big lie that holds the glue for science, as we're told, is gravity. And I wrote a blog post. I didn't explain electromagnetism, but I explained, how did they come up with gravity? Gravity is just based on the imagination of Newton. He said himself.
Right.
Newton himself said, it's so large an absurdity to think that a mass could affect another mass at a distance. And you start looking at these guys' quotes and what they were actually saying, and what the textbooks say, and we're taught lies. And
well, let me stop you right there, because I read David Wilcox, and there's a lot of people in the group, whether or not they think David Wilcox is disinfo or not. He has some fascinating books, New York Times bestsellers. New York Times bestseller. But his source field investigations, Richard and Rex, in my opinion, does a really great job of disproving, the gravitics model of gravity. And he talks about the morphogenetic field and, disks, or I'm sorry, that rotating spin and all these different things. So it's fascinating that you're talking about this, because it's very possible, at least in my opinion, that gravity is not what we believe it to be or been told that it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a very simple proof. I mean, here's an avocado and an apple. I mean, no one has ever proven that these two attract each other or orbit. Orbits, the only place that orbits exist is in people's imaginations and in textbooks and on television. Nowhere else. And, no one has ever proven that anything could orbit something else simply due to its mass. And that's the underlying principle of gravity. So you're right that it's not what we're. I mean, there is gravity. There's a reason why we're on the ground, and it's to do with the magnetic field.
Well, Rex, if you have other questions for Richard, I want to let Richard, because I know you are really big into this too. I want Richard to talk a little bit about his Hollywood stuff and Satanism and get into the pedophilia and a lot of the most cutting edge topics. But before we leave the flat Earth, and Rex, again, feel free to step in. Richard, again, going back my limited remembering of that book. So why did the Freemasons? Because I know that's what the theory is. The Freemasons, okay, before Kepler came to power and his theories about rotation of the different planets, we lived on a plane. The Bible said we lived on a plane, blah blah blah. All religions, texts, the ancient texts said we lived on a plane. So why did they create this system? Again, I'm not, Rex and I don't believe you. So we're the Earth is a globe, but why did they create it? What's the psyop? What's the general intent of psyop for it?
Sure. One point I want to make. You mentioned the Bible there. I think there's a common misconception.
The firmament.
Yeah, the firmament. There's a common misconception with people. Well, not everyone, but I've seen many people say when they get into the subject, they think that the flat Earth is based primarily on biblical, studies. What the Bible says. So the Bible says it's true. The Quran says it. All these books say it. That must be true, right? But I never opened a Bible until after I researched the flat Earth for a year.
Right.
And
then you were like, holy shit.
And then it's like, oh well, you have nature, as I was talking about earlier, nature, as I can see with my eyes and my own experience, and all these questions point towards it. All the ancient cosmology, they didn't have the Bible in Navajos and Incas and stuff. But they had that model as well, and then the Bible talks about it as well. So it does strengthen it, but it's not the the source that makes people become flat earthers. After researching the flat Earth, you can start to read the Bible and really appreciate a lot of truth in there.
Right.
But it's not, the way I went from, at least, is from a science approach to the Bible and understand what that's saying. And then you can find a lot of things in the Bible that are scientific. I mean, Nikola Tesla said himself that all I can't remember the quote, all divine power comes from God, the source, as I think you mentioned once. And he also said his mother told him to find all truth, and he could find all truth in the Bible. And the Bible is a scientific book more than anything else. Historic. It's. I mean, I found this from a purely academic study of it. It's.
You think the Old Testament scientific?
Absolutely. It's a science book, and it's a history account as well. I'll give you a quick example. The story with Adam and Eve is about quantum physics.
Yes.
And time. When you talk about sin, you plot. I mean, this is kind of hard to explain without visuals, but if you plot time on a three-dimensional graph, maybe Jay, you could pull that up. If you search for time cosine sine GIF, you'll find a nice illustration on that. On
what is it? Time cosine what?
Cosine. Hang on, let me see if I can find that.
Oh, I got one, I think.
Oh yeah, time cos GIF. Just search for that.
Time calls GIF.
Time space COS as in cosine, and then GIF as in like a GIF GIF,
Okay.
and you'll get I think there's a second one there. If you plot time on 3 dimensions on the graph, what do you get? You get a serpent on a pole. Then the formula is time equals cos plus I sine. So every ancient culture had the Ouroboros, the snake biting its tail, as a symbol, and you would often get the infinity symbol, the snake biting its own tail, and an infinity symbol, which means time. If you're in infinity, you're in time. Infinity means time. So what Adam and Eve did, they basically brought time into this world, and I mean it's the time realm, and we're stuck in it because I sign, just as the formula says. And sin is sign is that's why things decay in this life. And when you think to bring it onto the Hollywood subject you want to talk about, or the elite, I guess, Freemasonry. The Freemasons worship a big owl at Bohemian Grove, 40-foot owl. And I showed in my fifth post, links to the ancients. I showed that the owl worship has been going on, since the Aztecs, Egyptians, the Babylonians. Everyone has the owl as a sacred symbol, and it always symbolizes death. And
can I jump in real quick on that, Richard?
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but when you said the owl always symbolizes death, that's not the case. It also symbolizes birth. If you look at the native cultures before any Christianity was discovered to their culture, they looked at the owl as a messenger of either or. So some people, you can look at that's kind of like when you have these organizations that call themselves satanic, and they'll take these symbols that can be used for good or bad, and then they put all their power and energy into these sigils to manifest their desires, and then it gets on the internet, and then one person thinks that that's bad. He sends it to somebody else on Facebook. He sends it to 100 other people, etc. And then all of a sudden, a picture of a four-leaf clover is a racist, satanic Dark Lord symbol that represents little green marshmallow men that worship the Dark Lord. You know what I mean? It's just, people have to realize there's good and bad with most symbols.
Mm-hmm. Forgive me for my generalization. I mean, you're absolutely right. The owl does. I mean, in some cultures they consider it, rebirth, or the general concept with it is time, the passing of time, and the reason. I mean, not to get biblical, but the reason why Satanists worship time is the god of the world. You look at Saturn, the Grim Reaper, which is associated with death, is associated with Saturn. Saturn is often labeled as Satan, and so you have time as the concept being worshipped, and you start to see when people do evil stuff, pedophilia. How Pizzagate recently, sacrificing children to Moloch.
We just got zapped. Pizzagate. They just zapped us. Rex, are you still there?
No.
Keep going, Richard. We had to do that. That's a joke. Keep going.
All right.
The harp control.
Keep going, Richard. Sorry about that.
So I mean, when people do evil deeds, they get more power in this realm. It's kind of like you think what I was saying earlier about Adam and Eve. With time and sin, sign. It's kind of like an anchor. You get more sin, more sign. You're getting more heavily weighted down into this realm, which, I mean, to get biblical, the reason why I say the Bible is scientific text. I mean, if you think about DNA as software code, Book of Genesis is all about genes, DNA. It's all over it, and the Ten Commandments is like you imagine you're programming a computer and you have a bug, you have a virus in your computer. You're going to do a diagnostic to try and fix the problem. So the Ten Commandments are just like, a diagnostic. Here's the problem. This is what sin is. So, if you want to get out of the time realm, then stop attaching yourself to that. The problem is that everyone has sinned. Romans 3:4. Everyone has sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. This sounds like very religious, concepts, but it's actually very, very scientific stuff. And no one can get rid of sin. But thankfully, someone came and was sinless. So by the law of attraction, by believing on, the Bible says, repent of your sins and believe on Christ. That's the main message. Repenting, first you let go of that, negative stuff, and then you believe on the sinless entity. Sinless, signless, timeless, defeated death. Believe in that, you're going to attract that into your life, and you're going to become that. So it's like an energetic thing. I'm still studying this myself, but it's really, really fascinating stuff.
So let me. No, this is all good stuff. And Rex, I'm not trying to speak for you or anything. I'm just going to kind of turn this a little bit. So who are the Anunnaki to you in relation to your theory? And obviously, I know you don't want to save it, or I mean, you probably do want to save it for the big reveal as you continue to write your blog posts and get people to watch you. But obviously, you have a lot of people watching right now on the Decoders of Truth. We have a lot of people watching live. Who are the Anunnaki to you in your general, overarching theory?
I mean, I would say fallen angels would probably encompass it quite well. In my blog, I try to show in the first few posts all the ancient sites are aligned geographically.
Right.
They're built with the same mathematical principles. It's very clear that they got the knowledge from the same place. I'm sure we're on the same page on that.
Sure.
And I don't approach this from like, oh, the Bible says it must be true. But having seen so many other truths in that book, I'm inclined to believe that that's the fallen angels and masquerading in certain ways. So that would probably sum it up for me. I spoke in my, I guess it was the post that caught your interest in my blog, the 25th one with the alien agenda. There's a reason why Hollywood has been pumping out the number one theme in Hollywood is alien movies and has been for a number of years. And we're being programmed to think that aliens are real, which when you see past, it's another thing why the flat Earth is such an eye opener, because when you see flat Earth, you realize that outer space is a hoax. Satellites are a hoax. Planets aren't what we think they are. And it's a domino effect. And so the lies kind of present themselves. The whole idea that there's aliens in terms of extraterrestrials kind of falls in its face, because if there's no extraterrestrial places, terra firma, then there's no ETs in that sense. So the ETs we do have, which if you study Aleister Crowley and the depiction he did of females,
Lamb.
What's that?
I said Lamb. That's the ET guy that he summoned.
Lamb is a gray. Yeah, Lamb is a gray.
Yeah. They've even got the cult of Lamb now. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, they do. They actually have a practicing area up by the mountains. What's it called in Northern California? Shasta. It's crazy, but continue.
Doesn't surprise me. Yeah, sorry to digress, Richard.
Oh, no worries. But so I do believe aliens are real, but not in an extraterrestrial sense. ET, you have interdimensional.
That's what I was just going to hit you. So you're talking like ultra-terrestrials, interdimensional beings, but these beings are coming from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and even lower vibrational densities, right? Because obviously, a lot of people in the Decoders of Truth are interested in this question. Rex is interested in this question. What are archons then? So hold on. Let me set your hierarchy. So the Anunnaki to you are the fallen angels. So that means there's none of them are positive, or are some of them positive to you?
I would say none.
Okay,
so a lot of them would present themselves as angels of light. So
right. So they're negative, but they sometimes show up as positive. But then what would be below to you, again, in your theory of things? The Anunnaki, we talk about the archons, we talk about these lower density vibrational beings, in the Sons of Belial, you go to the Law of One. So where are they from? And are they allied with? You'd have to assume they are allied with the fallen angels.
Well, I would say that they're the same. Archons is the Gnostic way of looking at it. You have Anunnaki. These are, generally, Anunnaki is a Sumerian view of it.
I got you. So you're saying the fallen angels are all one and the same thing, but just different interpretations by different races.
I would say that. You have leprechauns, you have jinn, you have Anunnaki. Every culture has a description for them in a different way. But you have demons, all these different names. Right.
And so then all of them can appear to get people, because of their powers, because they're higher dimensional, they have the ability to show up in a different interpretation in a 3D human's conscious, correct?
Yeah, I would say that. I think a useful way of looking at it for anyone listening is, if you think of radio frequency, you're sitting in a car and you're listening to 98.5 megahertz or whatever. You turn that to 99 megahertz, another channel. You're listening to this frequency, but this frequency is still there.
Right.
And if you're, the human psyche, the mind, our senses, the eyes, the hearing, everything, we can only interpret a very small spectrum of what's there. Cats can hear outside of our hearing, dogs as well. Every animal has a different kind of audible range. So we know that there's something outside of our perception. And people who do ketamine, people who do amphetamines, all these kind of drugs, have reported seeing spiritual entities, demons, or people who do DMT see the spirit realm. And if you imagine the demonic entities or Anunnaki or whatever you want to call them, they can enter and exit this realm, but we can't perceive them when they're outside of it. So that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, I suppose, but it makes sense in my mind.
Rex?
The only other thing I'd like to add to that is, I think it's interesting to consider the possibilities at a quantum level. If you look at it metaphysically, the astral type realm, I do see it as a everlasting plane that goes on eternally, yet it's somehow like an 8 symbol of infinite possibilities. Yet in this physical matrix that we reside in, I still see this plane as a globe and other globes out there and such. But, this is definitely some food for thought, and I certainly appreciate all of this information you bringing it to the table. This is going to make a lot of the listeners at Leak Project and Decoders of Truth appreciate the fact that you discuss this, because I haven't had anybody on yet that has as much knowledge as you do on the flat earth, so that's much appreciated. And as far as the Hollywood stuff, I certainly can't wait to get in that. If you've kept track on some of the new TV series and films and movies and entertainment, they've really pushed this Lucifer, Lucy, transhuman, everybody's the same gender, everybody's the same, let's all plug into the matrix, let's all wear virtual reality sunglasses and do whatever we want to, sitting in our lazy boy chairs and injecting ourselves with formaldehyde and aspartame. Bingo!
I'm glad you brought up transhumanism, because that's another big one. Big subject. I mean, we see in movies Transcendence, the TV series Westworld. I mean, they're all preparing us for mentally for transhumanism. Becoming human cyborgs, I guess. But then there's another, the cool, I guess you could say the cool aspect of it. But I don't think it's cool because it has evil agendas. But if you think of, I don't know if you've heard of D-Wave in Silicon Valley. These big.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you imagine, in like sacred geometry and stuff, you can kind of mathematically show the fabric of reality as mathematical shapes. Kind of, it's a simplistic view, but there you go. The quantum computers have basically replicated our own reality. So now you have our reality and you have quantum computing reality. And if you imagine the movie Avatar, where you can plug into this digital reality, which I mean, I think there's a very deep underlying reason why Facebook and all these social media sites have been. They're mining data on everyone. I mean, with 100 likes, they can tell your personality. 300 likes, they can tell the whole life story, kind of. And I mean, they know everything about you. And in this digital reality, we all essentially already have an avatar created for us that we can just hook up to and just be in that reality, in the virtual reality. I mean, this is stuff that. A guy called Anthony Patch is a very good source to listen to on D-Wave and quantum computing, transhumanism. Because I mean, there's a lot of stuff for the fabric of reality, and you can hook up. In the Bible they talk about the mark of the beast. First, you realize what the beast is. The beast is the matrix. We're living in a holographic reality, and the reason why numbers 13, 33, all of these numbers show up. It's the manifestation of the matrix in our lives, and I mean, hooking yourself up with not necessarily with an RFID chip, because an RFID chip is just a stepping stone on the way to transhumanism. Because you can buy and sell with an RFID chip, but that's not what hooks you up to the beast. We're going towards a digital currency, a one world government, etc. And you're going to be able to hook up your mind to this digital system and have I've seen IBM adverts where they talk about lawyers. Oh, I'm a lawyer and I'll be able to remember the whole textbook, or I'll remember all the laws and blah blah blah. Like, this stuff is getting sold as a convenience, just like everything is. First you have holdables with mobile phones, then you have wearables with Google Glass and Apple Watch. Then you have injectables with RFID chips where you can pay. You have biometrics where you can use your iris or your fingerprints to unlock your phone or pay with a cash point. And we're going towards having implants and having synthetic skin. Instead of going into a store, an Apple store, for example, instead of going in there and buying a device, you could buy a better hand. You could buy a robotic hand that can allow you to lift things, heavy things, or you could plug a chip into your brain that could hear color. Or I mean, there's a TEDx talk on that, which is fascinating, where they say, I recommend that everyone should become cyborgs. And when you know the underlying agenda of what's going on here, it's kind of scary stuff, and people are going to fall for this. And the mark of the beast, hooking yourself up to the digital system, will be seen as something amazing, because you can be who you want to be, you can do what you want to do, you can jump off buildings and land on the ground. It's kind of like the Westworld movie shows you. TV shows like Timeless, they're showing you the future, because Hollywood isn't there for your entertainment. Hollywood is there to program you for the future. There's a really good example of that. There's a 1902 movie, French movie, about the moon landing, and they have exactly the same capsule, the same style, the same picture there as happened 67 years later.
67, yeah.
and it's crazy stuff. I mean, we're being prepared for this alternate like virtual reality.
Well, so what is the end game then? I'm sorry, Rex, I didn't mean to cut you off. What is your end game then, Richard? I mean, you're talking, obviously you're very, I mean, again, I'm not labeling you. I think you're brilliant. I think this is a fascinating conversation. I totally appreciate you coming on here. I know this is going to blow up on Lead Project, but what is your end game? I mean, you seem that this is, you, based on me inferring what you're saying, and again, I'm not judging you, you think that we're controlled by Luciferians, clearly. What is their end game? And I know you believe in God. You know, you're like all of us. You acknowledge a source. There's some sort of creator force. What power? I mean, is there a positive outcome for us?
So, I think the best way of describing this would be, hang on, me.
Rex, you can say Thimerosal now.
So this is very biblical, and I don't say that as like, you know, the Bible's, you know, whatever. I don't want people to get the perspective that I'm you know, pushing some religious agenda, because I'm not. I've never been religious. I was an atheist for years.
No, I know you're not. You're not. You know that.
Yeah, but so if we just academically look at Scripture, you know, 2 Thessalonians 2:4, he will oppose and exalt himself above every so-called God or object of worship. So he will seat himself in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. So that's telling you, if God dwells in your heart and you have an enemy in this world who wants to exalt himself above God, he's going to want to enter your body and control you from the inside. And, you know, you have, hang on, let me get.
Well, let me stop you right there just to speak about that. Then, so what you're saying then is he meaning the devil or Luciferians or whatever, archons or whatever, you know, fallen angels, they're already doing it then, right? So these they're inside some of the people that are, you know, engaging in pedophilia and child sacrifice, correct?
Right, yeah, on a spiritual level, but they don't have complete control. Whereas if you give away, I mean, your mind, you're basically, I mean, this is one of the main themes in Hollywood. You look at like Christina Aguilera, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, all of these movies are showing you satanic symbolism, and it's like sex kitten slaves, MK Ultra slaves, mind-controlled puppets. And if you hook yourself up to this digital system, which will seem amazing because you can be what you want to be, you can, you know, play virtual reality, whatever, you know, disease. A big thing that's happening is, you know, you have chemtrails and all these geoengineering things. You know, the world is being steered into chaos. But then this will be like the be-all, solve-all pill. You know, you hook yourself up to virtual reality, all diseases gone.
Escape the shit, right.
You're never going to die. You know, it'll be fabulous. But, you know, who controls this system? That's the problem. So I'm not against technology by any means. I think there's a lot of good uses for it. But the problem I do have is the negative agenda. And so here's another prophecy. I mean, transhumanism is prophesied in the Bible. So in Matthew 24:15, it says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. So the abomination of desolation is a destruction of the temple, which is your body, which is going to become transhuman. And so, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, let's take a look. Daniel 2:43 says, and whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So iron mixed with clay shall mingle themselves in the seed of men. Iron is nanotech DNA, you know, third strand DNA they're trying to push with you know, chemtrails. Clay is flesh, seed of men is DNA. And if you look on the emblem for Skull and Bones, they've got the numbers 322 under the skull and crossbones. That's referring to you know, DNA. DNA has each strand of DNA has 22 base pairs. You have 2 times 22. You know, that's normal. How about 3 times 22? That's adding a base pair. You know, you're adding a robotic strand. And so most people already have, you know, the chemtrails, you know, the nanotech inside them. So this thing is going to be ready to go. You know, everyone can just go to a center, or, you know, wherever they go and hook themselves up. There's a Verizon commercial which shows this. The Droid commercial shows people getting hooked up, the DNA connecting. I mean, you're basically just hooking yourself up to the beast system, the one hive mind. And I mean, this isn't necessarily biblical. It's I mean, well, it is in the root, but it's scientific. It's a scientific analysis of what they're doing, hooking you up to a cloud computing system. And to understand what's going on, you really do need the biblical perspective, because you can't really understand what the Freemasons are up to without the spiritual element. And I didn't set off on this on my journey of truth to prove the Bible or prove any of this stuff. I mean, I just wanted to find the truth. I'm an engineer, and I take it doesn't matter how ridiculous something is, but the more ridiculous something is, the more proof I want to see for it. And the only logical explanation I can find on what's going on in the world is the account that's written in Scripture. And so that's one thing with Scripture. The reason why I accepted, for a long time I was thinking that the Bible was, let's say, like predictive programming, like a Zionist playbook. Because if you imagine movies foreshadowing the future, then maybe the Bible was doing the same. So that was an argument I had for a very long time in my mind. But there's a lot of good truth on a few YouTube channels like Nicholson 1968 or on Enter the Stars. Enter the Stars as stars spelled 5T4RZ, where they decode, especially Enter the Stars, decodes a lot of biblical truth, which is encoded into our own anatomy, which is just fascinating. I mean, you have the 12 tribes of Israel. You have 12 nerves coming out of the pineal gland. You have the 2 eyes, and then the pineal gland, the 3rd eye. You have Jesus crucified between 2 thieves. So crucified, the pineal gland is between the 2 eyes, and the eyes, the optic, vision crosses in the skull. Crosses in the, behind the eyes. And the biblical account is that Jesus was crucified in a place called Golgotha. Golgotha is place of the skulls. So you have, I mean, this is just a couple of examples. But our entire history is encoded into our own anatomy and written in the Bible in a coded way, kind of. And the beauty of that book is that only someone who would humble themselves and follow the guidance of the Holy Spirit, as John 16:13 says, "The Holy Spirit's come; He'll guide you into all truth. Seek and ye shall find. Knock and it shall be open to you." You humble yourselves and you follow for this, and you'll find all of these truths that are hidden in the Bible in plain sight. So you can read the Bible 1,000 times, but if you don't have spiritual eyes, you won't find this. And so that's one. That's the anatomy in the Bible is amazing. Another aspect is, I'm a student of nature, cymatics, phi, and you can find there's a very good video I recommend people watch, which is called "Understanding Divine Creation" by D13 Watchman, which shows that the Hebrew letters alphabet is based on phi. So it's kind of hard to explain, but if you take the phi spiral, you put it inside a tetrahedron, and you shine light at it from 26 different angles, 26 possible angles, the spiral will create a shadow, and those 26 shadows correspond to the Hebrew letters in the Hebrew alphabet, which the Bible is written in. So you've got the alphabet that the Old Testament is written in is based on nature's maths as well. Then the actual structure of the Bible is based on phi as well. I don't want to get into that too much here. And you've also got the number codes, 37, 73, all over the Bible. So it's the Bible is a book that has the same mathematical source code as nature and as our bodies, and there's specific references in the text to anatomy in our body. I mean, the first mention of Jesus, preaching or telling people something in the Bible is when he's amazing the doctors in the temple. What would make him be able to amaze the doctors at age 12? Right. Only if you have this knowledge. I mean, it all starts to make sense. He's amazing some doctors who are experts, but no one 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago when these texts were written could have known the intricate workings of the anatomy. They couldn't have known how many nerve endings, all of this stuff is just, the inner workings of the eye. It's just some amazing stuff.
Right. All the ancient texts have access to technology that defies description, relative to our space and time as humans at that point in time. But let me just, because we're going off a little bit here.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's okay. This has been a fascinating conversation. We're getting great feedback in the group. But so, if I'm interpreting everything that we've been talking about today, you believe that these fallen angels, ever since they came down to earth, have, architected where we're at now: war, famine, pesticide, violence, death, all this negativity. So where is the end game for them, and how, obviously you're interpreting the Bible, so you must, I would assume, believe that, quote unquote, Jesus or God or something is going to come back and attempt to wipe out this satanistic society or creation standpoint, or their ownership or their enslavement of us, right?
Yeah.
So where are we on that? Where, in your opinion, I know I'm asking your opinion, but where are we on that timeline?
there's two ways of doing it. I don't want to say, you should wait because it's not going to happen.
No, but
now.
just guess. I mean, just guess.
I think we're very close. The word apocalypse
Right.
is very misinterpreted. In movies, they call apocalypse is like explosion of everything in the world, and apocalypse in Greek, apocalypsis means the revealing or unveiling.
The unveiling.
And the Bible says nothing. There's nothing that won't be known. And if the truthers who are looking for this truth in the Bible and other places are being revealed a lot of stuff. I mean, this anatomy stuff is just the last 6 months or a year.
Right.
A lot of stuff being revealed, which should tells us something. I mean, I'm not a biblical expert on the timelines and stuff, biblical scholar. But from accounts that I've seen, they said they were very close to whatever's going to happen. One thing I want to explain with Jesus, to understand who he is. I mean, he's a savior, the Messiah. But what is he saving us from? That's the key. Because if you just blindly hold on to him, then you're not getting it. If you understand that we're in the belly of the beast being the Matrix, then you can understand, sympathize what's going on here. You look at a cult. I tagged you in a post on Facebook about it, the cube. You look at the six-pointed star, Israel's flag. It's the hexagon cube. In the North Pole of Saturn, which was shown, there's a hexagon. All of the main religions are worshiping the cube. You look at the black cube of the Kaaba in Mecca. You have the tefillin in the rabbis have that on the forehead. You have Shiva, doing a hexagonal six-pointed shape. I mean, there's all if you think about the cross, what's so significant about the cross is that a cross is an unfolded cube.
Right.
So in one fell swoop, Jesus solved the time issue, which is sin, defeating death, and he also defeated the cube on a cross. There's a very deep symbolical meanings in that. And I mean, I'm going to get into this in my blog, and it'll probably make more sense because it sounds a bit abstract. But if you just go on Google and you search for the Saturn cube, black cube of Saturn, or whatever you want to do, you'll find that the cube is everywhere. You have the Xbox, the GameCube, the Brexit logo is a cube. Right. I mean, the cube is literally. I mean, you'll see this everywhere now that I've said it. It's one of these symbols that you don't pay attention to, but it's everywhere.
So let me just stop you then. I want to ask deeper questions, and then I want you to wrap this up and tell us what you think is going to happen. I mean, I know you kind of have, you don't know that. None of us know. But so would you say then that Satan, Lucifer, this, overarching fallen angel, is one being, and that the quote unquote elites, Illuminati, royal bloodline families, whatever you want to call them, they actually do communicate with him, at the highest level? Like you said, everything is compartmentalized, but at the highest level, are there humans actually in direct, like physical or telepathical communication with Satan?
I mean, I don't know if it's physical. I don't know how they would do it, but I mean, they're definitely in contact with him. At the top of the pyramid, you've got the Jesuits. I mean, it goes back to that.
Okay.
You've got, the Bible speaks of the synagogue of Satan, and the Star of Remphan. Star of Remphan is what we know as the Star of David. That's the Star of Remphan. That's the matrix cube, the hexagonal cube. And, I can bring in another aspect of this, which supports it a bit, is the Tesla 369. I mean, it's I'll put that in a comment maybe. But, I mean, there's some amazing stuff. The ratio in the cube, in the hexagonal star, between the hexagon itself in the middle and the star points is 73:37. Those numbers, the 12th prime number is 37. The 21st prime number is 73. So 1221. Jesus was conceived in the womb on December 21st, 1221, and born on 9/11. That's his birthday. They've made it into a day of mourning.
Right.
He died on March 29th, the 88th day of the year, and resurrected April 1st. April 1st has become a Fool's Day, day of mockery.
Right.
Pearl Harbor, December 7th, is 2 weeks before Jesus was conceived. So 2 weeks before Jesus was conceived, you have ovulation. So you have the Pearl in Mary's Harbor, and then you have the conception 2 weeks later. I mean, all of these events that are happening in our reality, all of them point back to Jesus. 9/11, overwhelmingly, and from a mathematical perspective, all of these events, 119, 116, which is 6 is 9, they're all encoded into events and movies and stuff, and it all points back to Jesus, and it's undeniable when you see enough of it. The thing with with synchronicity, I have a couple of blog posts on it. Most people have, I mean, when I started looking at that subject, 2 or 3 videos in, it seemed a bit crazy, but I saw 10, 20, 50, and then it starts to, you see enough synchronicities and you stop believing in coincidence. So the entire history of the Bible is encoded in our reality. Another example is World Trade Center Tower 7, which is built in 87, the Hebrew year 5747, and it has 47 floors. The Tower 7 was the halfway point of the Twin Towers lifespan, 73 to 2001. So you've got 14 years either side of that, which is talking about, alluding to the 14 generations between, I think it's Noah and Christ, 14 plus 14. So it's like everything that's happening in our reality is a mirror of what's happening in what the Bible talks about. So it just supports that account time and time and time again, and it's undeniable. Yeah, sorry, I think I went off on a tangent there.
No, that's okay. You did. I mean, this has been fascinating. I mean, as we said before, Rex and I don't agree with you. I'm not here to say that your theories aren't brilliant and that there's stuff that I definitely do agree with you. I mean, the biggest issue for me is like I can sit here and tell you right now that I could probably be proven that it is a plane. I do know about the research before. The Freemasons, created the revolving planet, the Kepler theory of gravitational spin and all that stuff. And so I totally espouse that is possible potentially. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. But realistically, what I can't get over is I can't get over all of the ancient texts who have the story of the Anunnaki or a similar story of the Anunnaki. So I guess where you and I will differ is that I don't see how Satan or Lucifer or fallen angels or whatever would plant so many historical, ancient texts with different, ethnicities and races and I wouldn't say species, but just different forms of humanity all around the world. There's so many creation stories and epics.
Yeah.
The Numa-Elish, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Sumerian creation story. I mean, there's so many, and then obviously it goes into the Bible. But I do see, like I said, I could sit here and I could probably say that a lot of the stuff that you're saying here is true. I believe that it's not all bad. I can't live in a world, maybe I just create that myself. I can't live in a world where it's all negative. You know what I mean? Like we're owned by Satan. Because I know that you still, as a human, we have free conscience and free will to practice loving, peaceful loving kindness and be positive with our fellow man and stuff like that. So, whether you're right or I'm right or you're wrong and I'm wrong, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously we're all humans here. We're all on this either flat earth or spinning globe. So, what are your final thoughts? I mean, obviously, thank you so much for coming on. I think we might have lost Rex. I don't know if Rex is on.
No, I'm still here. And
Okay,
I just wanted to say this has been great. And Richard, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your information for us. It's always nice to collaborate different ideals and options. And, please let our audience at Decoders of Truth as well as Leak Project know about your website again before we close out if they want to check out your blog spot.
My blog is called The Narrow Gate at www.thenarrowgateweb.wordpress.com. I recommend reading from the start because I've presented it sort of like a narrative, a book, in a coherent way, and everything ties together. I'd say I don't want, as I say repeatedly in my blog, and I'll say it again here, I don't want anyone to take my word for things. This is my opinion, but look into the information for yourself. Read my blog and double check everything I've written. Do your own research. Do your homework, because I don't want people to get into the habit of just trusting the source, trusting my source. I want people to be inspired to check things for themselves, do the research. And I think there's a lot of cool stuff you can research. So please check out my blog. And if you have any questions, do get in touch. I answer every email. Getting harder and harder to do, but I can't. Stay positive. I mean, it sounds negative, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. But you just gotta figure out what's going on in this world.
Well, that was what I was going to ask you before. I'm not going to let you get off that easy. I wanted to find out, like, in your theory, is Jesus, the Son of Man, God? I mean, the Son of God coming back to overthrow Satan once and for all? And are we going to move into a quote unquote golden age? And if that is the case, like, are a lot of humans gonna start another incarnation? Or what is your theory, or what is your thought?
Also, I mean, I'll say the biblical version is, Satan was the highest angel. He rebelled against God when God created man, because man was then above angels, above him. He didn't like that. So Satan's already a defeated foe. This is a great thing. The matrix, the beast we live in, is already defeated. So you just got to choose the winning side. And what Satan is trying to do, he's banking on the fact that if he brings enough people down with him, then God will forgive everyone, including him. That's his only chance. So that's why we're seeing so much negativity. Transhumanism is about it's the biggest assault on human DNA in history. I mean, we're made in the image of God. I mean, that's a very positive thing. I mean, there's some beautiful things that you can find out when you dig in the rabbit hole. I mean, there's a lot of negativity. There's a good meme that I posted recently, which forgive my French, but when you go down into the rabbit hole, you will find lots of rabbit shit.
Right. Right.
So I mean, there is a lot of rabbit droppings down here, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, and the tunnel itself is just an illusion as well when you think about it. So I mean, positivity is a mindset, but you gotta just disconnect from what the enemy is doing. Understand that transhumanism is not for our good, our benefit. There's a passage in the Bible which I want to bring up, which I forgot, which was they shall. Let me look that up. Sorry.
Rex, do you have any final thoughts for Richard?
No, I think that I've asked all the questions that I need to, so this is great.
Awesome, man.
Oh, sorry, I've remembered now. Those who shall save their life shall lose it, and those who shall lose their life for my sake will keep it. Eternal life. So saving their life. Whoever wants to get into the sheepfold, heaven, eternal life, spiritual, the next step. You can't get in there by choosing the egoistical option, which is transhumanism, to be your own gods. That's the original lie. The serpent to Eve. You can be your own god. You'll know good from good and evil. That's the whole idea of transhumanism. And it's not even a secret. It's not a conspiracy theory. This is actually spoken about on their own websites. 2045.com, for example. They want to become their own gods. And this is the transcending the physical. And that's where the whole D-word stuff comes in. But sorry, I don't want to ramble on again, because I can do that.
No, it's great. I mean, honestly, if Rex wants to jump in, I'll just say I really truly appreciate you coming on. I think you presented your theories at a very high level. I think you can speak intelligently, and you're very lucid. And again, I think you elucidated your theories and your opinions incredibly well. I mean, you're definitely one of the smartest people that I brought on, to talk on the show. And I felt like it's always awesome when two people interviewing a person don't really believe or agree with everything, but you did such a great job that I sit here and I can say that that I feel a little bit skull fucked. It's like going back when I read the original Eric Dubé's book. I just threw it to the side because I was like, I'm not going to turn my world upside down.
Yeah, well, I mean, I realize I really commend you guys for being such good listeners. I mean, I do ramble on. I talk about a lot of subjects. I try to use my blog as it's a good medium for me to express myself, because it's more. I can present it at a pace that's helpful instead of overwhelming, because a lot of listeners listen to this will just be like, as you say, mind fucked. And so I'd recommend, I mean, even to you guys, the Flat Earth, between posts 12 and 27 in my blog, and I'll write a couple more, but I present it in a very logical way that makes sense and answers all the questions in a lighthearted way, a few jokes, and it's probably more easier to understand where I'm coming from on that subject. Reading my blog. So yeah, and I again want to thank you as well for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. It's my first live. I was on one show before. The first one-to-one like this, or one-to-two live show, and it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Well, we thank you for coming on. We'll Rex, one of us, if not both of us, will interview you again. So again, man, thank you and Happy New Year. Okay, brother.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Happy New Year, Richard.
You too. Take care, Rex. I think, as I said, the Flat Earth is. I think there's more to it than what I've shown in my blog so far, but I kind of want to present it as a stepping stone. And I mean, I think when debating the Flat Earth, I think there's a lot of questions that people have that I think it's very difficult to debate. The moon landing, for example, or NASA's lies, satellites. How do satellites work? The spinning ball, and etc. Coriolis effect. There's so many questions, and I've tried to present them in my blog in a really logical way. But yeah, if you have any questions, I'm glad to cover anyone you want to pick out if anything stands out to you.
Well, what exactly convinced you that the Earth is flat?
So the first thing that I looked at in depth was curvature maths. So if you do in my 18th blog post, I do derive the curvature maths. Like if you have a sphere, what's the curve per mile on a ball, and I derived that with Pythagoras theorem and then Taylor series, and you get the formula for the curvature, and then you look out on the horizon and it doesn't really match, because after 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 miles, it's supposed to curve quite a lot, and buildings should start tilting away from you. If you're on a ball from 60 miles out, or you shouldn't be able to see the bottom half of buildings if they're 60 miles away, which you can actually do if you stand and have a good view of the horizon. So that for me, for one, maths, no matter what I believe or what I've been programmed, maths and numbers don't lie. And if the maths for the curvature of a ball doesn't match what I see in nature with my own two eyes, then there's a big problem. So that was the first major question that convinced me that something was going on. Then it's the fact, some very point blank questions. We're told we're spinning at the equator at over 1,000 miles per hour, moving around the sun at 66,600 miles per hour, and the solar system, the sun, is moving at 283,000 miles per hour, and the galaxy itself is moving at whatever miles per hour. These are massive, massive speeds, and yet we feel nothing. That's kind of another big question. I mean, we're told that gravity is the reason why we don't feel anything, but gravity can hold, or they say gravity can hold 321 million cubic miles of water down onto the ground. That's how strong it is, and yet a butterfly can just hover. And there's just some very obvious questions that don't really make sense.
Richard, let me ask you a question, Richard, real quick. So I've read what's his name, the major flat Earth conspiracy guy's book. Okay, I bought it 2 years ago. Yeah.
Atlantean conspiracy, or
whatever the guy's the book is his bestseller on Amazon. It's it's all pictographic. It's a very fascinating book. I read it about 2 years ago, and it definitely took me down a rabbit hole. The one thing that book really had me asking serious questions about and made me really start to think what the fuck is going on was the charts of planes, right? Like how planes fly transcontinentally and how they're not allowed to fly from certain locations on in the routes, and that was there was a whole chapter on that. Talk a little bit about that. Like what is the proof on how they won't allow planes to go from point A to point B because of it's because the Earth is that they don't want people flying the planes to know.
Right, I'm not sure which. I haven't read that chapter, so I'm not sure on that particular question. But I mean, planes. The big question with planes is the southern hemisphere flights.
Right.
And another one is, how do planes land on a spinning ball? I mean, if the ball is spinning and a plane's coming in, from south to north, and the Earth is spinning in the perpendicular direction, the Earth is spinning below it. How can it land on something that's moving sideways? It would surely crash. Gyroscopes, a gyroscope always finds its level. It's like this, and it has a level. You can never find level on a round surface. Level, something can only be level if it's level to something that's parallel. A round surface is never parallel. That's the same with water as well. If you look at water, I've got a water bottle here. Water will always find its level no matter what container it's in. And no one has ever replicated water sticking to a ball. So these very fundamental questions that no one asks anymore. I mean, Tesla said scientists, they get lost in equations and they build something that has no relation to reality, because they're stuck in theoretical physics and in mathematical equations that themselves make sense on a blackboard, but they have no relation to actual reality. So, I mean, to get back to your question, flights in the southern hemisphere, the distances are much greater. There's several theories with that. Either they're faking the flights,
right,
which appears to be the case because people have gone into airports in southern hemisphere and asked them
waited, yes.
They wait. They don't get anywhere.
Yes.
And there's the Qantas. They use John Travolta to make a massive big party about having the new flight line, but it's just a theater. I mean, why would they do that if it's just a normal flight? They have a massive theater to show the world that the flight exists when it actually doesn't. There's other theories, like they could be flying with the jet streams, which are very strong in the southern hemisphere. You know, they could be using faster airplanes. I don't know, but the most logical theory for me is that the flights are faked.
Yeah, I wish I would have brought that book so I could have gone more in detail, because I apologize, it's been a couple of years since I read it. But that was the one point of that book that really just completely blew my mind. There was a lot of it. I mean, that guy, Eric, what's his last name again?
Eric Dubay.
Dubay. He brings up a lot of fascinating stuff, but, you know, and Rex, you probably know this and feel free to step in, but, you know, a lot of people have said that he is a CIA plan, or he's connected to different disinfo groups and stuff. Let me ask you this, and Rex, feel free to jump in, Richard. What is the Earth? So assuming that we give you credence and that it is a plane, or it is, you know, does that mean that there is, you know, an infinite space out there, and that, you know, it's just we're not a circle, and that there are other, you know, planes, or is it just the plane is just a universal plane?
Well, if you, in my 16th blog post, The Taurus and Ancient Cosmology,
Right.
I derived, so I'll start with my first blog post, which focused on cymatics and phi. I'm sure you're familiar with phi
Sure, of course.
series, right? If you look at how the Fibonacci series works, the spiral, if you have a double spiral, and you put it, you know, in a circle, you'll get natural boundaries, which is much like the eye. The human eye has, you know, the pupil, then the retina, or the color part, and, you know, you get natural boundaries. That's exactly the same if you extrapolate that to how you know, nature would work. You have plants that have this formula, sunflowers. Sunflowers have natural boundaries as well, which are according to phi, the mathematical ratio. The eye does. So why would the eye and sunflowers have this beautiful mathematical ratio and spiral, and, you know, the larger system we live in wouldn't have that? I think everything is connected. Everything has the same maths, and if you consider this phi mathematics on you know, on the Earth, you get natural boundaries as well. So that's one. Then you also have, you know, if you look at how nature works, studying Tesla, studying the pyramids, you know, they get all their you know, electrical energy from nature. It's magnetism. You know, we live in a torus, a magnetic field, and the magnetic field is like it's kind of like an apple. An apple follows the magnetic field as well. Everything in nature does. A tree, and so in a magnetic field, you would have, you know, the center column, I guess you'd call it, of the field, and then it goes out. It's like an apple. An apple has natural boundaries. Magnetic field has natural boundaries. So there you have both phi and magnetism showing you that you have natural boundaries. And when you then, you know, you take vector equilibrium as well and throw that in, all of these mathematical principles that you see in nature can be replicated on a bigger scale. And when you take this model and you compare it to, you know, how every single ancient culture, you know, their cosmology, you take the Egyptians, you take the Norse, Yggdrasil in Iceland, you take the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Mayans, the Incas, the Navajos, the Tibetans, the Japanese, the Chinese, all of them, they have the same model. It's, I mean, different colors, different kind of, I don't know, design, I guess, but they all have, you know, a ball with a flat plane and, you know, the celestial stars on what's called the firmament, I guess.
Well, too, also remember the Piri-Reis map was based on a plane too. Remember, that was the map that was given to, you know, so-called, it just came out of nowhere. It wasn't based